and make sure that I'm sharing content on my social, especially LinkedIn, addressing, things that are on your mind. So thank you for coming and participating. I do have 3 questions that came in prior to today, to the meeting. But I am here for you. Whoever shows up gets the priority. So, and I also have some information to share with you. I actually want your input. I'm going to be starting a podcast. You're the first to know about it, except for my team, of course. And I want you to help me name it. So I will also put it on LinkedIn and stuff, but you're the first to vote in, because right now I have like 5 or 6 options that the team likes, but we need your help to get it down to 3. So all right. So I'm Kim Clark. I'm a DEI communications speaker and consultant. So my whole passion in my work is to help the content creator, the communicator, anyone who communicates, leaders, people managers, et cetera, ERGs, employee resource groups, understand the role of communications in the efforts of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because I'm a big believer in a few things. Language leads to behavior. Visibility drives accountability. And DEI will not be successful without us. It cannot be successful without us. So we need to understand what our skills are, what skills we need to build, what our role and responsibility is in our organization's DEI efforts. We need to step up. So a lot of the performative DEI messaging and narrative and commitment statements, et cetera, that we see out there is a lack of skills, lack of understanding what DEI is from a communicator's and a storyteller's standpoint in order to tell that story in a compelling vision and inclusive of all of our workforce. So some of our workforce is hesitant, pushing back, saying, why are we still talking about this? Or this doesn't involve me. We can change that. That's within our power as communicators to do. So, all right. So I want to open it up to you here and put it in the chat, or you can open up your mic. It's very informal. And let's just see what's on your mind and what kind of burning questions that you have. And if there are none, I certainly have these 3 that were pre-sent into me. Anyone to go? Tanya.
Can you repeat what you said, though? Language leads to behavior, and yet I think you had 3
and
salient points.
Yeah. Hi. Hi, welcome. Help me pronounce your name correctly, please.
Afua. Hi.
Afua?
Nice to meet all of you. Yes.
Hey,
Hi.
welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks.
So language leads to behavior. I was just kind of doing an open here, Afua, of things that I really believe as why this work needs to happen and why I do this work is to help communicators and content creators understand our role and responsibility in DEI. And so I was saying that language leads to behavior. Visibility drives accountability. We control the visibility. That's going to help with the accountability. And there's lots of ways that we can get to do that. And then the other piece, I don't remember what the third piece was. It was just that DEI will not be successful without us. It cannot be successful without us. I know DEI is structures, systems, policies, and the kind of the nitty-gritty of these systems, absolutely. But it's the story around the systems. It's the dialogues and conversations that we have to get the people who can change the systems to change the systems, right? So when we really take a step back and realize that DEI, what's the percentage? What's the percentage of DEI work that is actually dependent on quality, meaningful, transformative communications? So whatever that is for us in our roles, what is before us to do? What can we control? What can we influence? Where do we don't have to get permission? And where is it worth the risk to ask for forgiveness later, right? I did that all day long when I was in-house. Okay, so with that, any questions from this group before I go into any of the prerequisites? And again, I just want to focus on, if you're here, you get the priority. Anyone have any initial burning questions? Yeah. Go ahead, Gwendolyn.
Okay. I guess question, advice seeking. I am currently working with a couple of our different teams on language in the workplace. It was previously titled English in the Workplace.
Okay, that's a step forward. All right.
Yep.
Seeing how
So
you're in
small-
Canada and there's multiple languages, yes.
Yeah, and being in a healthcare setting, like the importance of having like English as a business language, because scenarios that you are in are sometimes life and death.
Mhm.
But trying to find that balance of like being like you need to speak English at work, but also like not, but still allowing people like if they want to communicate in their own language in the break room, things like that, because there have been issues with like nurses talking to each other in their own language around patients, and then patients making complaints and things like that, and how to kind of like address it basically
Mm.
without, because obviously there's not going to be a policy made or enforced or anything like that, but recognizing that it is a very, very, very delicate line
Mhm.
to tread.
So there's a couple of different things here that are coming up for me is that we've got the language as a content, but we also have language as an audience. So from the content standpoint, nurses speaking in their native language that they understand or that is their first language, et cetera, being done away from an audience member that cannot participate in that conversation, like go to the hallway, go to the break room, whatever it is, to where they can have those conversations that are not impacting negatively other doctors. It's not exclusionary. Is what I'm trying to get to. So the inclusion of nurses trying to convey information to each other in a way that they can better understand than English. That's inclusion, right? Like, because the point of communication in general is connection. So we want understanding and we want some sort of behavior out of this understanding. So I see the benefit of saying, okay, people within their first language, making sure that they are being inclusive of each other in the content or the communication that needs to be exchanged. But we don't want to exclude audience members in the area who it's actually, has a negative impact. So other staff, patients, like remove yourself to where it's you're prioritizing the focus of the inclusion in exchange of information, but without the negative impact of the exclusion with the audience members that cannot participate in that communication. I would start there. And look at the speakers within your organization. Get, is it a survey? What is it? Find out what the demographics of the languages are that are spoken primarily by the staff and by the community that you serve. Get the stats on that, because that should influence how you're doing your materials as well.
They did a big systemic racism study, and they finished it in the fall, last summer, early fall. And I think that was included. I'll have to go back and double check, but yeah, I'll go look. I had that thought initially and then did not think of it, and then I'll go back and look at that again though. Yeah.
This is the way that people get kind of confused or can't really put equity into the world of communications. But this to me is one of those examples of equity. You need to remove barriers in order to create that more the goal of understanding, of building connection. And if communications, and that's why sometimes when I'm doing trainings, I'll put in exercises. I think Tanya has seen these exercises where it seems like it's normal business workplace language, but it's so full of acronyms or jargon or problematic terms that somebody from outside of the country would not know the colloquialism reference that we're talking about. So if we're in the US and we're talking about it's a battle of the inches, well, the UK is going to be like, I don't know, what does that translate? Is this into centimeters, meters? What are we talking about here? So we lose people. So we have to understand the language that we're using, making sure that it is as inclusive as possible. But when it's not needed, like I want to strengthen those people who have languages that they can share, but they need to look at their intent around it and say, okay, so nurse and I talked about this, and this is what we said, and then you can translate it into English, but there's also a very strong argument of how do we bolster up other language competencies beyond English so people can learn other predominant languages that may be in the workforce. So if Spanish is 51% of your staff speakers and English is 49% of the speakers, it's not all on Spanish speakers to learn English. English speakers should be learning Spanish as well. And the organization should support that. Tanya.
Just listening to what Gwendolyn was saying, I wondered if it might be helpful to have like signs up to say that you do have, people from multiple, I don't know what you think about that, but there's multiple languages spoken here. And, we encourage that to, be able to treat you better or something along those lines. Would that be acceptable?
That's kind of like what I'm along the lines of what I'm working on right now, in that like it's a poster that's like, if you're doing anything to do with like diagnoses, treatment, care goals, things like that, like that should be done in English. And then here are the scenarios where speaking your own language may be more appropriate. And so like trying to find that balance of yeah, so I get what you're saying, and like, yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to do, but also being very cognizant of like the phrasing and the language used within that poster for that reason, like you're saying.
I was thinking more for the audience, people that hear the different languages, just kind of explaining that we're an inclusive workplace and we do have people from different, that speak different languages, and you may hear those from time to time, and just kind of forewarning people so that it's not a surprise when it happens. And this is why we do it. This is why we think it's helpful, those kinds of things. Just really quick quips so that people see it and then have an understanding. Because I think, especially like you're saying in a medical setting, you want to know what's happening with you as a patient, I'm thinking. You don't want to think that things are going over your head or happening that you're not aware of. So kind of keeping you clued in why those conversations are going in, and then maybe even giving them, if you don't know what's happening, ask, giving them that permission to ask for help, to understand.
No, I like the framing of that. And I think that's a good point, because yeah, we think of it very much from like the employee perspective, less so from the patient perspective. And I think that I do think that we list like spoken languages in some of them, because there are like, we have very niche communities where I am, that like there are other languages that are predominantly not English. And I think actually framing that from the patient perspective could be a really neat aspect as well. That's a really good idea. Thank you.
Yeah, just imagine if you are Spanish speaking and you don't know English very well and everyone's running around and all you feel is the energy and the panic and you have no idea what's about to happen.
And like, I will add, like, as a caveat, like there are formal translation services available, but like, it takes time. You're on the phone, it's hard to get and whatever else. So knowing and having that available, and just that knowledge more publicly available, I think is actually a good thing. Yeah.
Did you have a question as well, Tanya?
Of course, always many questions. I keep asking this question, I think, because I can't seem to quite get it, but it's DEI HR?
No. DEI is a partnership like HR. Nobody needs DEI more than, nobody needs DEI more than HR, in my opinion. I just actually had a lot of exchanges on a LinkedIn post on this very topic just yesterday, actually. So if you look at legal, finance, in a typical corporate structure, in HR, they are embedded and influence policy and structure and decision-making in every single department in the organization. You need budget, you got to go to your finance department, your partner, right? Legal, same. And IT, you got to fit IT in there as well. Everybody needs a computer. Everybody needs budgets. Everybody needs hiring practices or onboarding or whatever it is for their team. And legal advice, at least at the top of every single department. So DEI is actually no different. And it needs to be its own thing with the head of DEI. There are some schools of thought of the head of DEI reporting into the CEO, but also having external consultants, because the CEO is usually not qualified to measure the head of DEI's performance, because the CEO should be the student of the head of DEI rather than the evaluator. So there's that. Like, otherwise, the DEI is going to always have this like box and this framing to fit in, so the CEO knows how to evaluate the performance, rather than stepping back and being the student of what do we need to do from a DEI standpoint. Because leaders did not get to where they are because they're awesome at DEI. So it's humbling, but that's when you can really get effective. So no, it's a partnership. So you should have DEI folks in product and sales, in customer service, and working in partnership and in tandem with legal, with IT, right? Because it's a layer on top of what you already have in your structure. And then, of course, you should have communication people that partner with these organizations, DEI comms and marketing, DEI comms and sales. How do you do your customer care scripts, the forms that people fill out when they fill out a membership to join your organization, and then they call in with a question, and the customer care person is calling them by their dead name, and it's because the form doesn't allow, because it's requiring a legal name. So there's a lot of opportunity there. From everything I just said is all communications, right? So that's why I really believe communications should be across, but DEI needs to be its own thing with its own budget, just like HR, we already do this. And we're just adding another team that's actually going to benefit the entire organization as you embed it across.
I think it's just probably difficult for companies. And I wonder how many companies really are set up the way that you explained it, or if they are, pretty much with everything being in HR. And because it kind of makes sense, you're dealing with people in a sense, and you think, okay, this is the response. Yeah.
But this is also like, this hasn't worked. We wouldn't be where we are if it worked over the last 30, 40, 50 years that we've been doing DEI in its different formations. It's been put into HR to be contained. HR is there to protect the company, not the people. And until HR understands that protecting the people is protecting the company, we're going to have this ceiling, and it's a low ceiling. So it's not working in HR. It's just not. And so it's a paradigm shift. So it's a very expensive mistake to keep it in HR, especially over these last 3 to 5 years. Very expensive, because then you can't figure out why you can't get more stuff done. And it's because you haven't set it up for success. You're keeping it like the baby elephant, analogy. Put a leash on a baby elephant, they can't pull out of the stake that it's tied to, and then it's a big, huge adult elephant, and it could totally pull the stake out of the ground, but it doesn't, because it thinks it can't, because it was raised to believe that it can't. And so it's just, you kind of have to unleash DEI, but we can't use those terms because it'll freak people out. Communications. We're going to freak people out. They're already super nervous. And, when is this going to go away? It's not going away. This is the future. We're seeing the resistance because we're making progress.
Is there anything that kind of points to that, what you're saying, that, I guess any studies or anything that we can use? Yeah, because I talked
and
with
HR being ineffective. Oh yeah,
several groups that I know are there. They're not separate, and we've been kind of having conversations about that to see
and
what the trends are and how to really make that
Tanya,
case for it.
I'll totally send you stuff.
Okay.
And it includes you on this thread that I just commented on yesterday. Absolutely.
Okay.
So but a lot of it is just our fault when we move from company to company. We are hired because we've had success on X, Y, and Z at this other company. So we are asked to bring that best practice to this company. We're repeating the same mistakes as from the last company, rather than looking at the customization of this culture in this time with these resources, these personalities, and customizing, and I don't use best practices when it refers to DEI. I don't think we have them. I don't think we're there.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll get you that information. But a lot of it is just, it's status quo, traditional kind of thinking. This is how we do it, or it's empire grab from an HR standpoint. They don't want it to lose because they don't want to lose the resources. They don't lose the head count. I don't want to lose the budgets, and I don't want to lose the control. Because, that's the most exciting thing happening in HR these days is DEI work. We're going to be honest. and it continues want to have business value. But until they start getting on this train, if you will, on this wagon to be pushing their policies, their structures, their processes, their practices forward, they are going to become more and more irrelevant. And we're going to pay the price from a talent standpoint, which will finally impact the business from a revenue standpoint. Caroline.
I was nodding my head continuously on all the points that you were making, and I was wondering if you could draw that parallel to some of the disinvestment in DEI that we're seeing, particularly in the tech space.
Yeah, so some people are making decisions to put DEI where they are because they know they can divest from it, and because they haven't set it up for success. So some people will put a bunch of money into training, for example, but if it's not tied to a DEI strategy, if there is no DEI strategy, they can say, see, we tried it, it doesn't work. But they didn't either A, know what the work actually is to make it successful, or B, they actually did sabotage it. But it's usually ill-equipped resourcing and understanding, going back to my earlier point of really truly understanding the historical and social context and the business impact of DEI with an organization. They may have thought that they knew. There could have been good intentions. Absolutely, there's room for that. And we also have to acknowledge kind of like an ugly truth that some people deliberately put it in there for performative purposes. And so they had no intention of it really being built in systemically within the organization. So you don't blow out your head of sales, but you can blow out your head of DEI. See, that's the paradigm thinking that we as communicators need to help people wrap their heads around, that DEI is a solution to our business problems. It's not the problem. It highlights problems, but it's actually an outcome. It solves our talent problems. It solves our PR problems. It creates the outcomes that we actually desire. So it's changing minds of how people have been looking at DEI for especially the last 20 years as this nice to have HR thing. And so to them, it's something that can be cut from the budget, because especially if it's the first time that they had a head of DEI over the last 2 to 3 years, first, last in, first out kind of mentality. So any organization that's still doing layoffs has not taken the lessons from DEI seriously. If you did, you would be in a different position with your talent, your structures, your systems, understanding equity. You would not be in a position financially or talent-wise. You'd be more of an all-weather company. You would not be going through layoffs. So these companies that I see that are super progressive, that are cutting $10,000 jobs, 10,000 employee jobs, Amazon over and over and over again, I just sit back and say, hey, they don't get it. No matter how much money that they throw at ESG, which is CSR, a whole bunch of acronyms. So philanthropy kind of work, corporate social responsibility, environment, social and governance. There's a big argument of not having DEI as part of social and ESG. And so you just have to, there's the part that we do of what we say, but then we also have to look at what our company's doing. So we believe what you do, but we want to believe what you say. So that's our role, especially for internal communicators, is that say do gap. Close it. Hi, what's your question, Ifwa?
Sorry, looking for the mute button. So I work for a nonprofit, which is like a membership association. And probably in the last 5 years or so, we've been going through a transformation where EDI or, equity is a big part of what we're doing. However, our members haven't really gotten the memo.
Yes.
And so you have leadership saying one thing, and I credit our leadership for actually seeing EDI as a critical business function and not pigeonholing it in HR and saying that EDI actually has to be organization wide. But when we start talking about what we're doing when it comes to issues like racial equity, the pushback we get from our members is really either, they act surprised, or, we get this is political correctness run amok. I joined for, I want my membership fee back. This is not what I joined for. And so my thing is that how do you, well, maybe it's not possible, but how do you bridge that gap between what your association has determined is mission oriented? This is what we're going to do. This speaks to what our field has been created to do, which is to solve social problems. And a membership that's very sort of entrenched in the status quo. All I want you to focus on is getting me my billable hours, that kind of thing. And the rest of it is just wokeism run amok. So how do you, because it's very different talking to, we have to talk to multiple audiences. It's very different internally talking to staff about how EDI is so important. And then you switch and try and communicate to the members, and it's just like a brick wall. So
yep. I have a client who's going through this exact thing, and they're nationwide in the US. So I'm going to put, and this is for everybody. Ifwa, please set up time with me and let's have a conversation about this. I'm putting my calendar link in here. And this is for everybody, if you want to go deeper on what you're talking about. But I specifically want to spend time on this particular topic because it is a very interesting conundrum. And so, I want to talk to you about it. So please set up time that works for your calendar. I realize also that we are at time. So if you wouldn't mind, take a look and help me name the podcast. What should I name it? The DEI Lens? DEI is in the details, intent and impact, the communicator's role in DEI, communicate like you give a damn, creating change in communications. So if you're looking for a podcast and it's on this subject, what helps pop for you and connect what we talk about and the work that we're trying to do and the problems we're trying to solve, that you would know that that's the podcast for you. All right, let's see what everyone voted. Okay, let's see here. Oh, interesting. The DEI Lens. That got the most. And you helped me also narrow down, which I appreciate. So creating change in communications, not sexy. Got it. Okay. Roger that. Okay, excellent. So I will send you all some more information, including my calendar link, should you want to set up some time. I'm having some Women's History Month events, actually one in particular coming up. If you're interested in participating in it, if you look like me, join me for a virtual watch party of the documentary called Deconstructing Karen. And we'll have a discussion afterwards, as well as I'll send out a book to you called White Women. So if you're interested in that, your ticket goes to the book. I'm not making any money off of it. And then there's also the Conscious Communicator Book Club. And Communications is a partner to DEI. Yes, Tanya, absolutely. All right. And so, so I'll send you some information on this. And so there's a couple more ways that we can continue to have our conversations throughout the month. And please keep this on your calendar. Come back next month. I'll be in another city. I was in another city last month doing this, and I'll be in another city traveling. So send me pictures, send me your questions ahead of time if you do have questions. And if I see that you're here and the question, it came from you, then I know, and I'll make sure that we prioritize that. Thanks for your time, everybody. I appreciate you joining me today, and I hope it was a half hour well worth it. All right, take care. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.